Picture a room full of preschoolers, crayons everywhere, construction paper, the smell of art supplies, and small people doing exactly what small people want to do when left alone, drawing. Not because anyone told them to, not for a prize, just because drawing is wonderful, and they are 4 years old, and 4-year-olds still know what they love. Now imagine you walk in and offer them a shiny certificate for their drawings, a gold star, official, important looking. They take it, they draw, they hand over the pictures, you give them their reward. Here's what happens next. You come back a week later. No reward this time, just crayons and paper and free time. And the children who got that gold star, they barely pick up their crayons. The ones who got nothing, still drawing like it's the most important job on the planet. You just watched someone fall out of love with something they loved, and you did it with a gold star. So let's talk about this, where the idea came from, what it tells us about how motivation actually works, and why the system that's supposed to get people to do things, the reward, the bonus, the grade, might be quietly undoing the very thing it's trying to build. In 1971, a young researcher named Edward Deci was about to pick a fight with an idea that had dominated psychology for most of the 20th century. That idea was behaviorism, the belief that human behavior is shaped almost entirely by external consequences, that you do things because they get you rewards, and you stop doing things when they don't. Simple, clean, wrong. Deci ran a deceptively quiet experiment. He brought college students in to solve Soma cube puzzles, three-dimensional shapes you assemble to match pictures. Intrinsically satisfying, the kind of thing you keep fiddling with after you should have stopped. In the second session, he paid half the students for each puzzle they solved. The other half got nothing. Then, in the third session, nobody was paid. And partway through each session, Deci would excuse himself, claiming he needed to go check some data and leave the student alone in the room. Through a one-way mirror, he watched. Students who had never been paid kept playing with the puzzles during the break. Genuinely, voluntarily. Students who had been paid mostly stopped. They sat, they waited. The puzzles were still there. They just weren't interesting anymore. The reward had worked. It had also done something else. It had changed what the puzzle meant. Before payment, the students played because playing was good. After payment, they played because they were paid. And when the payment stopped, the activity didn't mean anything at all. 2 years later, 3 researchers at Stanford, Mark Lepper, David Green, and Richard Nisbett, ran the version of this experiment that still makes people uncomfortable today. They identified preschoolers who genuinely loved to draw, not kids who drew because they were told to, kids who chose drawing during free time again and again because they couldn't help it. Then they split them into 3 groups. Group 1 was promised a Good Player Award, a certificate, a gold star, a ribbon. Genuinely exciting stuff if you were 4. They drew, they got their award. Group 2 was given the award unexpectedly, after they'd drawn, with no prior mention of it. Group 3 got nothing. 2 weeks later, the researchers put crayons and paper back out during free play and watched. The children who had been promised an award, the ones who had entered into a conscious exchange of effort for reward, spent roughly half as much time drawing as the other 2 groups. Their art quality, rated blindly by judges, had also declined. The unexpected reward group? Fine. The no reward group? Fine. It was only the expectation, the explicit deal, that did the damage. Lepper, Green, and Nisbett called this the Overjustification Effect. Psychologists spent the next few decades confirming this and fighting about it. In 1999, Deci, along with colleagues Richard Kostner and Richard Ryan, pulled together 128 experiments and ran them through a single meta-analysis. The verdict was hard to dismiss. Tangible, expected, contingent rewards, meaning rewards you know about in advance, specifically tied to whether you do the task, reliably undermined intrinsic motivation across children and adults, in schools, labs, and workplaces. But here is where it gets more interesting than a simple "rewards are bad" headline. Verbal rewards, genuine praise that conveys you've done something competent, did not undermine intrinsic motivation. They actually slightly increased it. Because praise, when it's real, tells you something about yourself. It says, you're good at this. And feeling good at something you love makes you love it more, not less. What kills motivation is not reward in general. It is reward that feels controlling. Reward that signals, you are doing this for me, not for yourself. Reward that quietly changes the answer to, why am I here? Teresa Amabile at Harvard spent years studying this in the context of creativity specifically. She asked professional artists, people who had staked their lives on making things, to submit work they'd done on commission and work they'd done for themselves. Outside judges rated the commission work as measurably less creative. Not worse technically, less alive, less surprising. The artists, when they knew the work was for someone else's specific purpose, converged on safe choices. The work that came from nowhere, for no audience, for no reward, that's where the real work lived. Evaluation has the same effect as money. Knowing you'll be judged is enough to shift your orientation from I'm making something interesting to I'm making something acceptable. And acceptable is the enemy of great. So if contingent rewards undermine motivation and evaluation suppresses creativity, is the answer to just stop doing both? Not exactly. Deci and his colleague Richard Ryan spent decades building what they called self-determination theory, and the core of it is this. People have three basic psychological needs. Autonomy, the sense that you are choosing what you do, that it's yours. Competence, the sense that you're getting better at something that matters. Relatedness, the sense that what you're doing connects you to something larger than yourself. When those three things are present, intrinsic motivation is nearly impossible to kill. When they're absent, when you're controlled, when you feel ineffective, when the work means nothing, no bonus will save you. The companies that figured this out did something interesting. Google gave engineers 20% of their working time to pursue whatever they wanted, with no deliverables, no performance review. Gmail came out of that time. Google News came out of that time. Not from the parts of the job with the biggest rewards attached, but from the unstructured hours where nobody was watching and nothing was promised. Autonomy made things that bonuses couldn't. Remember those preschoolers and their crayons? The gold star didn't teach them to draw less. It taught them, without meaning to, that drawing was the kind of thing you do for a reason. And once you believe that, you need a reason every time. We do this constantly, with children, with employees, with ourselves. We reach for the obvious lever. Reward the behavior you want to see more of. And sometimes it works, for simple, routine tasks that no one cared about to begin with. But for the things people actually love, the curiosity, the creativity, the craft, the reward arrives like a well-meaning friend who accidentally explains why your favorite song is good, and then you can never quite hear it the same way again. The research Deci started in 1971 with a puzzle and a one-way mirror has held up across 50 years and hundreds of replications. It says something quietly devastating, that the way we routinely try to motivate people is, for the things that matter most, making it worse. Not because we're cruel, because we never thought to ask whether the child wanted the gold star in the first place. They just wanted to draw. And they still do.